Hey, y'all, welcome to this week's show. I have got a big announcement for you this week. Last April, my friend Steve Cunningham got in touch and said that a representative from Sophia Institute Press had reached out to him, and he copied me on the email, to ask if we would consider writing a book on herbal medicine. Well, you know me. I said, sure, why not? It wasn't like I was already writing 3 books at the same time. I mean, I'm constantly writing books. I've written, I think, 19 books in the last 5 years. I mean, I'm always working on at least 2 or 3 books. Plus, I do 3 podcasts a week minimum, an article every week. I write for a magazine. I do YouTube videos every week, teaching people how to play guitar and mandolin, or doing herb videos or cooking. I'm always doing stuff. So I said, hey, why not? Let's give it a shot. And what they were interested in the fact that, I approach herbal medicine from a traditionally Christian and specifically Catholic mindset. My training in herbal medicine is very well grounded in the Western European herbal tradition that really grows out of Christendom. When Christianity was established in about 2,000 years ago, most Christians were Jewish. There were some Greeks, there were some Romans, there were some Samaritans and such. Most Christians were Jewish. About half of all Jews converted to Christianity in the first century or two of Christianity. They brought with them this incredible tradition of herbal medicine that actually, if you have a real Bible, a Bible that has 72 books, 72, 73, as opposed to the 66 or whatever that most Bibles in America have, you will know this. Now, maybe I should clarify that statement. There was no Bible at all for nearly 400 years of Christianity. There was the Old Testament, obviously, but there was no agreement of which books of the Old Testament should be included in the Bible. Some liked some books and some liked other books, so they didn't like other books at all. There were the Gospels, which were mostly dictated by the apostles, except for St. John, who wrote his own and wrote Revelation and the books of John in exile, or the Isle of Patmos. He lived to at least 80 AD. So between 30-some AD and 80-something AD when he died, the other apostles were all martyred. They were all killed for their faith. The Gospels were usually not held by any one church. Rome according to, and people have disputed this, but it's ridiculous. The Roman records show that St. Peter was the bishop of the Church of Rome, and they killed him. He was martyred in Rome. Was it under Nero? I think it was Nero. He was crucified, and he requested to be crucified upside down because he didn't believe he was worthy to be crucified in the same manner as Christ. He was crucified upside down, singing hymns and preaching, and converted many of the pagan people of Rome, who were so impressed by his witness. St. Paul was killed about the same time. His bones were taken, and basically they had to be smuggled away after the Romans let the body down, and they were placed in basically a little tomb. And over that, one of the first Christian churches was built. They took the altar where he used to give communion and put it on top of it, and it became a major site for Christian worship for hundreds of years. And I mean, it's totally documented in secular, non-Christian Roman history. And then, of course, you have like Clement writing in 100 AD about that very fact. And you have Origen and Irenaeus writing within the next 20 or 30 years. I mean, you're talking between like 100 AD to 120. Actually, really before then, because I think it was it Irenaeus? I'd have to double check. I mean, he was writing letters back and forth to St. Paul on Patmos. He was writing letters back and forth with the Blessed Virgin Mary. I mean, how anybody can dispute that. I mean, and they said, where the Pope is, there is the Catholic Church. Okay. This is not made up centuries later. We're talking like 80 to 120 AD. These were the first Christians saying, Peter's the first Pope. He's in Rome. His successors, Linus and Cletus, are in Rome. And wherever the Pope is, that's the center of the Christian church, which is in Rome. I guess that may be shocking to you if you grew up in absorbing a lot of anti-Catholic bigotry, and they taught you that Peter was never in Rome. No, Peter was not only in Rome. That little church, once Rome became a Christian nation, his tomb was exhumed. His bones were taken up, and they were placed beneath the altar of what is now St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican. Not only do we have more documentation for the fact that Peter was the first pope of the Catholic Church and was martyred and buried in Rome, we've kept care of his. Well, like I said, we have more evidence than that than say Napoleon was ever the emperor of France or ever fought, Waterloo. I mean, we literally have every single bit of historical documentation whatsoever necessary to prove it. But for some reason, people still say it's not true. And it's just stupid, honestly. I mean, this is the year 2026. You got the internet. You got a library in every town. You can stop living in ignorance and just accept that, yes, Peter was in Rome. He was the bishop of the church in Rome. Before then, he had been the bishop at Jerusalem, but he went from there to Rome. I think, where was he for a time? Smyrna, maybe? I don't know. But anyway, he went to Rome, finished his papacy in Rome, was crucified upside down as documented by what would be like the newspapers of the day and written down in the secular history books. His bones preserved they're literally more evidence for Peter dying in Rome than for Jesus being crucified in Israel. Literally more evidence. So, I mean, I don't even wander down that path, but it's just ridiculously frustrating. I mean, just past week, someone was saying, Peter was never in Rome. Yes, he was. Here's the evidence. Well, he was never the Pope. Yes, he is. Here's the evidence. Well, the other churches weren't under his authority. Yes, there is. Here's the evidence. And it's like, can you be this stupid? I mean, literally, you can drive a car and vote. I mean, and still be this ignorant and just utterly stupid because you have an anti-Catholic bias. Anyway, getting back to my point, when The first Christians were, of course, Jewish, and some Greeks, and some Romans, and some Sumerians, et cetera, Ethiopians, and such as that. They brought with them thousands of years of herbal medicine. And according to the Jewish history books, literally, Adam and Eve had knowledge of, all the uses of medicinal plants that was passed down through generations. And then after the flood, the archangel Raphael taught Moses and his descendants about herbal medicine. And like I was going to say, if you have a real Bible, the Bible that was put together by those first Christians by about 370 to 400 AD, remember, for almost 400 years, there was no Christian Bible. That's how I started down this path. There was a gospel in this church being preserved and saved. There was a gospel in this church being preserved and saved. There were epistles, the letters, like St. Paul would write to the Corinthians. So the church at Corinth had the letters from St. Paul to the church at Corinth. The church at wherever else had a different epistle from him. They didn't share. There was not a printing press. Everything had to be handwritten. So, the church gets together, Council of Nicaea, and there had been several meetings before then, and says, we're going to put together a Bible. We need to decide what books are going to come into it. By Nicaea, it was finalized. St. Jerome was tasked with translating everything from Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic, and Latin into one common language, which was Latin. And he did almost 400 AD, so nearly 400 years. There was no Christian Bible. That's what's known as the Biblia Sacra Vulgata. Biblia Bible essentially means a big collection of works. Sacra, of course, means sacred, and Vulgata means in the common tongue. So that was the Bible for the next 1,500 years or so. And then Martin Luther came along and he said, well, I don't like this book and I don't like that book, and I'm going to change the words of Jesus to this. And he took out every book he didn't like. Well, among the books he took out were Sirach, where it talks about the physician as being given the knowledge of medicine by God. Very important, right? But if you don't have a real Bible, if you have a Bible that doesn't contain Sirach, you don't know that. Tobit, talks about how, again, Archangel Raphael interceding and teaching people about medicine and healing people. There's a lot. If you don't have a real Bible, if you've got a King James version of the Bible, you don't have a real Bible. Okay. The Douay-Rheims is an excellent choice if you want to look into that. The Douay-Rheims is older than the King James, and it was written in English. So the whole myth of the Catholic Church wouldn't allow the Bible to be written in English. Complete, utter bullshit. Literally Gutenberg, with the permission and encouragement of the church, invented the printing press to print Bibles. And he was printing them in German. In England, it was the Douay-Rheims. The Douay-Rheims, I have mine side by side with my Latin version, and it's absolutely identical, except the Douay-Rheims has all kinds of explanatory notes and context and history, and it's a wonderful, wonderful Bible. So anyway, if you have a real Bible, you will know that the early Christians had a tradition of medicine that came with them from the Jews, partially. And of course, the Jews had been in Egypt, they'd been in Babylon, they'd been, slaves and captives in just about every major civilization in the ancient world. And a lot of interaction with Persia and a whole bit, right? They had a very sophisticated system of herbal medicine, and they had dedicated physicians. So you get to the time of the beginning of Christianity, and the early Christians, being mostly Jewish, are now mixing with Romans and Greeks. And Greece had an incredible system of herbal medicine, and Rome had a very sophisticated system of herbal medicine, specifically in Rome, where there are doctors that were dedicated to being army physicians or treating the emperors and such. And they were very interested in all this knowledge. So by the time of, say, 300 AD, Rome has become Christian. The doctors and physicians and everything have taken all that information that came to Rome from the Christians, that came to Rome from Greece, that was, Romans had learned as they went out and invaded other countries, and they were bringing it together into this just incredibly rich and unique system of medicine. And here's the deal. The way the early church spread was through that medicine. I've written a whole book on this, the Christian history of herbal medicine. The Holy Roman Emperor Charlemagne wrote what was called the Capitulaire, and he demanded that all Romans and every church and monastery and nunnery and all that have what they were called physic gardens, as well as vegetable gardens and such. But these were herb gardens that produced medicine. The Benedictines and other orders were specifically dedicated to caring for the sick. And they spread from Rome throughout Europe into Asia, all over the continent, creating these little monasteries, which would also have a hospital that treated people for free. And it had a little garden, and those herbs were the herbs that they used for medicine, and they would store them in their apothecary, which was called the officina. Now, you may have seen many herbs like Salvia officinalis. Why does it say officinalis? That means it was an herb of the officina. That sage was an herb that was in use by monks and nuns and priests who were the doctors of their era 2,000 years ago. And that's really how the church spread. Yes, Rome once controlled most of the world, but it didn't conquer all nations. Rome demanded that people acknowledge Christianity. Rome was not actually that big. You have to remember when the barbarians invaded and the fall of Rome. Christianity had barely been around a couple hundred years by the time the civil structure, the governing force of Rome was on the wane and then fell, right? Christianity did not necessarily spread to Ireland, for instance, because of Roman rule. Actually, it was a Roman Christian named Patrick who was abducted by pirates, Irish pirates, and taken to Ireland as a slave, who converted Ireland to Christianity. Not by force, but because he showed the power of God. He literally walked out and said to the kings of Ireland, the God I worship is more powerful than the God you worship. Get all your druid priests together. Let them build a bonfire. I'll build a bonfire. Soak mine down with water. Let theirs be dry. Let them call down fire from heaven instead of on fire. The druid priests go out there and they do all their ceremonies. Nothing. He had them just pour water on the wood. He had a trench built around it, so it was literally soaked in water. He said a prayer, fire came down from heaven, and that's how Ireland became Christian. Very similar stories throughout Germany, throughout England. It's just incredible to read that early history. But miracles aside, the main way the church grew and Europe became Christendom was through medicine. Those humble monks that would go out and they taught agriculture. They brought people out of starvation. They taught people how to read. They adopted orphans. They ran orphanages. And they had free hospitals. And they cared for people. Literally, when the first Christians came to Rome, there was a plague going on. And they banded together and they went out and took in the destitute, the sick off of the streets, took them into their own homes and cared for them. So the history of herbal medicine is not only incredibly Christian, at least for the past 2,000 some years. And if you want to get into Jewish history, we can go back a good 10,000 years of documented history. Who knows before that? But Christianity itself is essentially bound to the practice of herbal medicine. There are very few things you can do that are more Christian than grow herbs and use them to heal people, especially your family. So, and as I was saying, if you have a real Bible, you probably already know this. If you have a counterfeit Bible, the one you're going to find in the bedside table in a motel room, or, the little Gideon Bible somebody hands you, You're not going to know that. And beyond that, there's a whole lot of history, 2,000 years of history that are not contained in the Bible. That, you know, I mean, the first book of herbal medicine in the Christian era was written by Abbot Walafrid Strabo, 700 AD. This is not only, he was a great theologian and scholar, he was actually one of the most influential theologians of his time. He was a very renowned abbot and actually the tutor to the grandchildren of the Emperor Charlemagne. He writes the first modern herbal called Hortulus, 1080 or so AD. St. Hildegard von Bingen writes these incredible books on herbal medicine. It's, I document all this in my book, the history of Christian herbal medicine, and I've talked about it a lot. So, given that information, I guess Sophia Press decided that, they really ought to get me to write a book on herbal medicine from a Catholic perspective. Now, Steve Cunningham is a great guy. He's here in North Carolina, a good friend of mine. We met on, I guess, Twitter 2 or 3 years ago, and it was total fluke. I mean, nothing happens by accident. Let me get a sip of water here. It is absolutely amazing how God works things together that seem so random, and they're not. So here I am. It's like maybe 10 o'clock at night, and I'm tired. I've written all day. I think I've been working outside or working on my truck or something. Had a good meal and a couple of drinks, and I'm just like barely hanging in there. I'm like about to fall asleep in my chair. Something stupid on TV. Yeah, I may have been staying up to see the end of a ball game, actually. You know how much I love baseball. So I'm sitting there, and somebody, it wasn't even somebody I was connected with on Facebook, or Twitter, I'm sorry, asked a question about how inflation was just awful at the time. How can you afford to feed a family in this day and time? And I said, I just typed back real quick, and it was sort of a flippant offhand comment. Like, well, I grew up on $5 a week. That was our household budget. Literally, it was pretty tough when I was a kid. And my mom made do, and I learned how. And I said, easy, I could feed a family of 4 for certainly no more than $10 a day, and probably 10 a week. And he's like, you're nuts. He comes back, there's no way. Give an example. And I'm like, well, a bag of lentils is still about 99 cents. An onion's about 50 cents. Can of chicken broth, maybe $1, probably less. Chicken bouillon cube would be less than that. And I could put together a pot of lentil soup for about $2.50 that would feed a family of 4 for about 2 or 3 days. And he's like, I never thought of it that way. And I said, well, yeah. I said, that's just, one option. And certainly, if you want to make that more nutritious, you could get a couple of chicken thighs and cook them down and make your own broth. And that's going to not only stretch it further, but it's going to give you a lot of protein and fat and everything that you need. And you could add some tomatoes to that, and you're going to get a lot more vitamin C, certainly a little salt and pepper, Creole seasoning. You know how to do that. Make it a real gourmet meal. And even if you threw in a glass of white wine, which is kind of traditional, chop up a carrot and celery, maybe, you're talking about a big old pot of soup that's going to feed people for a few days for less than $5. And he was like, that's incredible. And I'm like, well, yeah. But there's even more than that. Look out your backyard. Do you have dandelions? Do you have red clover growing? Well, depending on the season, you could walk out in your backyard and you can gather all kinds of food. And then beyond that, if you want to plant some seeds and grow a garden. And I thought he was going to come back, some sarcastic comment. I didn't know who I was talking. I didn't know who I was talking to. And he's like, this is awesome. Okay. How do you know this? And I'm like, well, this is what I do. I write books on herbal medicine and foraging, and this is kind of how I grew up on the farm. And, We had some really tough times, and we literally did live on $5 a week, and that was in town with no garden. I mean, you're talking, yeah, 1980s, things were cheaper, but um, my mom cooked from scratch, and we never went hungry. And I mean, yeah. And I grew up to be, 6'4", 210 pounds of pretty much solid muscle. We were not doing bad. And so he's like, "Well, I got to go check out your books." So I'm thinking, is this guy for real? I mean, he's so enthusiastic, right? And so he's like, he gets back with me. "I just ordered your book, Herbal Medicine for Homesteaders, Permaculture People." I'm like, "Awesome. Yeah, great. Let me send you my cookbook, PDF for free. You can have both of them. You know how I do things. I'm very generous when it comes to my work." And he's like, "No, I ordered that one too." And I'm like, "Okay, well, let me give you this one." So before long, he's got 3 or 4 of my books, and he's reading them. And he's coming back with just incredible feedback and really interested. And amazingly to me, I mean, he's getting into herbal medicine. He's starting to grow a garden, and he's like, "This is life changing. It's fantastic." Well, come to find out, he's got one of the biggest Catholic podcasts in the entire country. I mean, I just knew him as a guy from, the Charlotte area who grew up in South Carolina, and we like baseball and country music and, you know, um, movies like The Outlaw Josie Wales. We're going back and forth talking and just having a good time. And he says, "Would you come on my podcast?" I said, "Well, yeah, sure. I'll come on your podcast." And he does an interview, and boom. I mean, like, I sold 100 books the next hour. And I was like, whoa. And I look, and he's got like 200,000 followers or something on YouTube. And I mean, it's like nuts, right? So that's how I got to know Steve. And we've gone back and forth. And I mean, we argue sometimes. We disagree about politics or something. We get along great. We're friends. That's good. It's good. It's a good thing to have disagreements with people and remain friends. That's something people used to do, and we should still be able to do that. But yeah, we agree on far more than we disagree about. I mean, we're both Catholic, we're both Southern, we're both, gardeners now and different things, and we have a good time. We both love baseball. So this guy gets in touch from Sophia, and he says, "Steve, you think you could talk Judson into writing a book with you?" And Steve says, "Well, I'll ask him." And I'm like, "Well, of course." So that brings us up to about April of last year. And we put our heads together and figured out, all right, what kind of book can we write that's going to be like super useful? It's one thing to write a very religious book, okay? That's not what this is all about. Now, it has a religious aspect. We have stories of saints that are associated with different illnesses or healing events. We have, prayers. We have Bible verses. We have a lot of religious content in the book. But we wanted to write something that would be absolutely useful for everybody, whether they're Catholic or Protestant or not even Christian, everybody. You pick up this book and you can use it. It's not going to be, this was very important. We talked about this. We don't want to use a lot of jargon and big words. We don't want to get really technical in, all the preparations and such. We want to do kitchen medicine. So anybody out there can pick up this book and immediately either go find something in their spice and herb cupboard or go out back and pick an herb or harvest something from a tree or, order something online that'll be there in a couple of days, and they have practical, usable information. It's very important to me. That's always how I strive to do that with this podcast. I want to give everybody my, 33 years. I'm 48. I started my herbal internship when I was 15. So yeah, 33 years of herbal experience with all the classes I've taken, all the people I've stayed with. I want to make that right here for you. No barrier to entry. That's it. I want you to have that knowledge and that information because, I don't feel like it's mine. I mean, I never have been, I'm not a guru type. I don't say I've got some secret knowledge and the lost information. No, this is all out there, and it was taught to me pretty much free of charge for the most part, and I give it to you pretty much free of charge for the most part. Every now and then, yeah, there's a book for sale, and I have to put food on the table just like everybody else. I got to make a living. Well, we decided to come at it from that perspective. First of all, we cover, a little bit of history. People are so, I mean, I was talking with a fellow the other day, and he was Canadian. He didn't know a lot about how things had happened in America. But, America had this huge, this rich culture of herbal medicine up until the early 1900s. I mean, one of the first schools of herbal medicine here was the Eclectics, the American Eclectic Society. And John James Audubon was big in that. I mean, Benjamin Rush, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. I mean, the first settlers in America, even before America became a nation, were herbalists. And they were very interested in learning about the native plants from the Native Americans. And that's why it was called the Eclectic School, because they were bringing together the British, etc., tradition of herbal medicine and combining it with what was native and here. And it was huge. Then came the Thomsonians. There was an outgrowth. And I mean, really, at one point in time, probably half, if not more, of the doctors in America were not what we would consider modern medicine doctors. They were herbalists from the Thomsonian and eclectic schools. And there was tons of crossover in between. I mean, physicians that went to, like Oxford and Cambridge, they would also study herbal medicine because 99% of the medicines out there were plant-based. Pharmacists were making tinctures, and syrups and all kinds of stuff like that. We really didn't have chemical medicine until really mid-century 1900s. But antibiotics by 1920 or so? Everything was plant-based. But we had around 1916, the Pure Foods and Drug Act that was passed that essentially made the professional practice of herbal medicine illegal. And in fact, I believe it was the Rockefellers that essentially bought up all the herbal medicine schools and closed them. They did everything they could to destroy herbal medicine and make it illegal. And again, it was Catholics in Germany and Austria and Switzerland that preserved herbal medicine. Fathers Nape and Kunzel and Brother Aloysius, etc. When the guilds in England and France were outlawing herbal medicine, when the government of America was outlawing herbal medicine, when the Nazis and communists were regulating everything to death, those priests and monks saved herbal medicine in the Western world. Outside of that, it was just like, kind of fringe communities. The Amish, they continued to do stuff. The Mormons, they continue to do stuff. The Mormons had to flee to Mexico at one point. Think about how much herbal medicine knowledge would have been lost had one little thing gone wrong. Appalachia, where I grew up, poor people back in the mountains didn't have doctors. They continued to practice herbal medicine. But for a good almost 100 years, the practice of herbal medicine in the United States was essentially illegal. At least if you did it for any kind of pay. And you couldn't sell herbal remedies. It was illegal. That really only changed, really thanks to Orrin Hatch in the 90s, because the Mormons had that tradition, and he wanted to legalize the sale of their herbal remedies. And that's the only reason things changed. When it comes to legal terms. Now, when we look at our culture in general, things started to change a little bit in the 1960s. Yul Gibbons wrote the book, Stalking the Wild Asparagus, and it was huge, New York Times bestseller, and early 60s, and people started going to the woods and foraging again, which was, pretty cool. And then he followed up with Stalking the Healthful Herbs. And he did his research, and it's sparse herbal. There's not a lot in there, but it got people interested in herbal medicine again. And he did. It was really well done. Gibbons is a major hero of mine, as you know. So by the mid to late '60s, it was sort of seen as like this countercultural hippie thing to get into herbal medicine. Well, and they did. And so for the 1970s, 80s, 90s, an American's perception of an herbalist was a hippie or a witch, a Wiccan, a pagan, a neo-pagan, a hippie. Not the backwoods mountain people that I learned from, certainly not. Not the Amish or the Mormons, certainly not. And certainly not a Catholic monk or a priest. So especially because of popular culture and magazines, all the new age stuff that was so popularized in the 90s and through to the current day. But I mean, when I was learning about stuff in the 90s, in Boone, North Carolina, my only information that I could get in print, because there was one or two herb books at the library, and they were cool. I mean, I enjoyed them. We had the Foxfire books, but mostly it was new age magazines. I mean, everything was really, far out, and books by hippies from the 60s and 70s with horrible advice, and then a lot of new age stuff, a lot of Ayurveda. People were really getting into yoga and stuff in the 90s, so that was kind of popularized. It was really hard to find traditional, solid, rooted, grounded information on herbal medicine. Even where I lived in Boone, North Carolina, had I not had access to the traditional mountain folks, I guess I might have considered herbal medicine to be like, new age, hippie, Wiccan, whatever. It's not. I knew plenty of Cherokees and Catawbans and Lumbees and Waccamaws, the Indian tribes all around North Carolina, and they had practicing herbalists who were Baptists and Methodists. Nothing new age whatsoever. So I didn't even grow up thinking about it that way. But a lot of people these days do associate herbal medicine with new age spirituality and such. So that was the other thing. We had to say, look, you can be a very Orthodox Christian. There is nothing non-Christian about herbal medicine. And of course, you know that if you listen to my show. We give the history of how the church developed through the hospitals and how herbal medicine and the church grew together, and how the first Christian missionaries to the Americas were learning about medicinal plants from the natives, etc. That's how we got quinine. That's why it was called the Jesuits' bark, because it was a Jesuit priest who brought quinine to Europe. It's very, very not new age. The practice of herbal medicine. God made the herbs, God made people, and herbs are for all people. So it doesn't really matter what your religion is. Then there's something to be learned from all cultures and traditions, especially when it comes to the way we use plants. So we decided to put this book together. First, number one, common sense. Number two, you don't need to fear herbal medicine. It's approachable. Number three, very useful. You can do it in your own kitchen. And I tell you, I think this book turned out remarkably well. The title is Herbs That Heal, Catholic Home Remedies to Forage and Grow. Every chapter is based on common ailments. We might start with, I think our first chapter was sore throats. Then, we have sinus issues, we have colds and flus and eye issues and menstrual issues, and the common stuff you're going to deal with in your house that you don't have to run to a doctor for. That you're probably better off taking care of yourself. We give, 5 to a dozen herbs for each illness that you can easily grow. And I give growing instructions for all the herbs. You can source them from the grocery store, or you can source them from your backyard. I give advice on foraging. It's kitchen medicine. And, I got to tell you the truth, I'm pretty proud of this one. It is an absolutely beautiful book. Sophia Press did an amazing job of illustrating it with botanical prints, with artwork. It's just incredible. And yeah, I mean, it turned out great. It really turned out great. It's all very practical. It's all very usable. I hope you'll be able to purchase this book. It will be available on May 19th across the board. Right now, you can pre-order it from sophiainstitute.com. Again, the book is Herbs That Heal, Catholic Home Remedies to Forage and Grow by Judson Carroll, that's me, and Stephen Cunningham. Um, I, okay. If I was starting out in herbalism, especially if I had a family and I knew I needed to take care of my kids and myself and my spouse and all that, and I had no knowledge of herbal medicine whatsoever, I'm thinking, what home remedies can I use? That was really like our question. What home remedies can we use? And this book would be essential. I think it would be more useful than just about any book on my shelf. I'd put it right up there with Maria Trevin's books. Um, yeah, it's really so just broken down into common sense, usable. It doesn't talk down to you. It doesn't use a bunch of jargon. It's, I mean, Steve and I are both kind of lighthearted guys. We keep it kind of light and fun throughout. Slip in a few jokes every now and then. You know how I do. And I think it's great. I mean, I honestly, I'm loath to praise my own work. So because this is, I co-authored it with Steve, I feel a little more comfortable saying this is a really darn good book. I mean, it really is. So, I mean, check it out. There'll be a couple of articles coming out in the press in the next couple of days that'll be talking about it. Hopefully, I'll be doing a lot of interviews. Maybe you'll see me on television or something. But right now, you can go to sophiainstitute.com, look for the books Herbs That Heal by Judson Carroll and Steve Cunningham, and you can read a great synopsis of it. You can pre-order it. It's $24.95. I mean, honestly, as beautiful a book as it is well worth that. I mean, their illustrating staff, their graphics design staff went above and beyond. I would really like, it says Catholic Home Remedies to Forage and Grow because they're a Catholic publishing company and the two authors are Catholic. And we do come from a Catholic tradition. This should be in everybody's home. I hope you can get one for yourself. I hope you can give them to your friends, family, and loved ones, your neighbors, whether they're Catholic or not. Obviously, this is same herbs are going to work for a Baptist or an atheist. It's just, not an issue of that. It's just a darn good herb book. I mean, really. I think Steve and I were talking about maybe doing a series of podcasts on it, kind of going through the chapters and talking about things. Honestly, if I have the opportunity, I may start using this actually as the curriculum for some in-person classes. That would be really good. Now, I can't travel a lot due to family situations and such. At some point, though, I would not mind teaching groups. Maybe going around to the biggest, I don't know, 5 or 6 Catholic churches in each state, or a community college, or a library, and inviting everyone in and literally using this as the text. It's that practical and it's that good. But hey, if you buy the book and you listen to my podcast, maybe you don't need to see me in person. But I wouldn't mind getting out and meeting y'all at some point. Anyway, I hope you check it out. And I'll be talking a lot more about this book over the next few weeks. And we got some phenomenal endorsements. Frank Salvato, he's a conservative political radio host, endorsed it. Samantha Stevenson, she's an author of Grow Where You're Planted. Marjorie Wildcraft, if you listen to my show for long, Marjorie has been very helpful in my career. We've been friends for a long time. Liz Rietzig, the Raw Milk Mama, she gave us a good endorsement. Patrick O'Hearn, he's an author of, he's actually the guy that reached out to us to start with. He's a Catholic author. James Walton, Prepper Broadcasting Network. Yeah, it's a great book for preppers. I mean, he sees it as just incredibly practical advice. And Jonathan Fessenden with Missio Dei, that's a Catholic publishing company. He endorsed it. I mean, people really like this book. And I have to admit, I really like this book. And honestly, um, I've been writing, well, for years now. And as I said, I think this is going to be my 19th book. I don't own a single copy of any one of my books. Is that weird? Yeah, it probably is. But I always figure I don't need copies of my own book on my shelf. That would almost be like, I don't know, a little altar to myself or something. That would be like, I'm not comfortable with it. You know, it's, I'm maybe a little too humble to have my own books on my shelf, but I am going to get a copy of this one. Um, it being a co-authored book, it's just such a useful reference. You just flip to it, and even I don't remember everything all the time. You know, sometimes I need to refresh my memory, but it's also such a beautiful book. I mean, the illustrations are just incredible. So anyway, I hope y'all will be able to get a copy of this book. I hope you'll find it as useful as I think it can be. It is certainly worth 23 bucks. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's 33 years worth of herbal experience and knowledge in this book, minimum. And you got to remember, I learned from people who were in their 80s and 90s, who learned from their ancestors, who learned from their ancestors, etc. There's really like thousands of years of herbal knowledge and information in this book at the, right at your fingertip, put in plain language that anybody can understand and use. So if you do happen to get the book, please leave some positive reviews on Amazon and anywhere else you can leave a review. That helps a lot. And really, if you have any of my books, if you have just a minute to leave a positive review on Amazon, that helps so much. There are people that don't like me because of my politics or my religion, and they leave nasty reviews, and it really hurts sales. Every positive review I get, it basically takes 10 positive reviews to balance out a negative. And there's not a single person out there who's left a negative review that was because of the content of the book. They can't say the information was wrong or it was poorly written or it was hard to understand. No, I make things, I do my research, I know what I'm doing, and I write things in a way that is conversational and easy to understand. When people leave negative reviews on my work, it's really because they dislike me personally or because of my politics or religion. And there are a lot of people that do. Okay. So, Christian History of Herbal Medicine or Herbal Medicine for Preppers or, any of those books, somebody will get on there and they're just like, leave this ridiculous negative review that has no foundation in the actual work itself. And it takes 10 positive reviews minimum just to balance out that one negative. So, if you ever get a chance to leave me a positive review, I really appreciate it. And remember, y'all, whether you like it or not, I pray for every one of you every single day. Pray that you'll be blessed and healthy. And if you don't mind, please say a prayer that our book will sell, Steve's book and mine, or what Herbs That Heal will be a very good seller. I think it could go very far to make a very positive difference in this world. Um, like I said, I mean, when I was a kid in the 90s, just about the only thing you could find on herbal medicine was going to be in some New Age magazine down at the hippie bookshop. This is really quite a lot of work to try to bring herbal medicine back to commonality in just, normal culture. Let it, not be fringe. Let it not be some hippie woo-woo thing that people think, one, probably doesn't work, but two, is just superstition or is all like witchy or something. No, it's not. It's as practical as, sage tea can help with a sore throat. I mean, there's nothing weird about that. And I mean, that's my approach. You know that. You've listened to the podcast long enough. Or maybe, maybe this is your first time. I'm telling you that herbal medicine is just incredibly practical and is the foundation of all our medicine, because all medicines, with the exception of a few like heavy metals and such that were used sort of like in, um, um, okay, we won't get into that. But Paracelsus, what about 1100, 1200 AD, introduced some toxins. He's the father of toxicology. Very, very rarely used in medicine up until the time when we started doing modern chemotherapy, which does use toxins in it. But up until really almost 1950, nearly every single medicine used by regular American doctors and British doctors and Canadian doctors and all that, who had degrees and everything, was plant-based. Now things are synthetic and they have tons of side effects. Tons. I mean, listen to some of those disclaimers at the ends of those commercials sometimes. A basic understanding of herbal medicine would certainly be useful if you couldn't get to a doctor. I think we can all agree on that. And sometimes you can't get to a doctor. You might be in a hurricane, like I've been many times, or snowed in, or maybe another COVID lockdown comes around again. A basic knowledge of herbal medicine is really life-saving. And frankly, I think if you're a parent, I think you have the responsibility to learn that and to pass it on to your kids. And if you're not, if you're a single guy like me, man, I hate going to doctors. I mean, I don't want to go spend hours in a waiting room to spend 5 minutes with a doctor to be given a prescription that I probably didn't need and won't work and has all these side effects. But doctors have their place. So does herbal medicine. And again, if you have a real Bible, it will actually tell you that. A lot of misunderstanding and mistakes have been made because of the books cut out of the Bible. And that's a topic for another day. In fact, I do a whole other podcast on that. It's called The Uncensored Catholic. And if you're interested in topics like that, be sure to check out that podcast because, gosh, so much of the history you're taught in school is fake, made up, fabricated. And so much of what you're told on television and the media is just propaganda. I mean, I don't want to get, you have to do your own research and make up your own mind, which is apparently do your own research and form your own opinions is like a controversial statement these days. Not in my world. In my world, we eat real food and take care of ourselves and don't rely on the so-called experts who usually are morons. All right, y'all. I'm wandering off topic again. Have a great week. Remember, Herbs That Heal, Sophia Institute Press. And if you get a copy, take a picture of yourself with the book and send it to me. Say, hey, give me an email, judson@judsoncarroll.com or southern-appalachian-herbs@gmail.com. Tell me if you loved it. Tell me whatever. Let me know. I want to have more interaction with y'all. Things are just... I got some issues going on right now. I can't really travel. The classes I was hoping to be teaching the last couple of years, everything got screwed up by a hurricane. Hopefully soon, I can get out there and we can meet in person and, go out and harvest something from the woods and cook it up and talk about herbal medicine and, have a good time. But until then, feel free to get in touch. Email, social media, whatever. All right, y'all, have a good one. I'll talk to you next time. The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.